recording. Turn this off. All right. So, like I said yesterday, all of the core concepts, the three main concepts that you're going to be like learning and kind of owning, we've already covered now. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Today, we're going to continue to bring them all together, and then just as practice. So, does anyone want to like tell me what are the three main concepts that we've covered so far? Pick one, someone. Go ahead. DOM manipulation. Awesome. That's one. Communicate with server, with fetch. That's two. One more. Yeah, event handling. Three. Those are the three. Those are the three things. And just to review them, why do we, like we mentioned, like manipulating the DOM? Why do we do that? What's the point of that? Go ahead. Love it. To create dynamic content. It's for the user, right? It's for us to not have to make new page refreshes. It's also for us to just like have this dynamic, interesting content that the user can like look at and things can update and change. It's like the view almost. What about for communicating with server? What's the point of that? For data persistence, exactly. That's literally the reason. That's like to maintain data back and forth. Love it. So those are the problems for those two. That's what they solve. What about event handling? What is that? What is the point of that? Good. For dynamic interaction, yep. So you ask perfect. So you ask the question: is my user doing something? Is there something happening that I can like respond to? That's where event handling comes in. You handle the event and you do something, and this is how you use them together, right? So. So you start to ask the question, do I need to save data? If I need to save data, or do I need to like update a database? This skill set. Do I need to update the DOM, right? Do I need to update the DOM? That's DOM manipulation. Do I need to capture interaction from a user or in general? That's event handling. And they can work together. You could say, when a user clicks something, what is a click? Which one would this fall into? Event handling, right? So when a user clicks something, right? That's the when. The when is like, in this case, a click from like an HTML element. Then I want to maybe, here's what I want to do in plain English. When a user clicks something, I want to save something to our database, and I want it to be updated in the DOM. Which tool do I use? So I use the server communication for what part? Yeah, so if I want to save something, if I say like I want to like, so one of the things we're going to do in a second is I want to like or hug something, right? So if I want to update that to the server, or if I want to update that, if I want to save that information, that click could say, hey, send some data, like using this server communication, send it to the database and save it. And what if I also want my hug count to go up on the web page? What else would I need? This part, yeah, I would need both, right? On a click, I'm like, when I click, maybe I want like my hug count to go up. We already built that, right? We clicked hug, the hug count goes up. And then we need to also save it on the server. So we need all, this is how they all work together. And you can use them different ways, right? So I just want you to think about these are the three things that we're doing, and they're all you can connect them in different ways, but they all solve different problems. So when you're starting to go through any web app, and you're like, what do I do? You're like, okay, well, do I need to save data? Yeah, cool. Do I need to, or like update data or create stuff on the database? Yes. Do I need to like update the DOM, create things on the DOM? Oh, yeah, that's this tool. Do I need user interaction? Yep, that's this tool. Cool. Just keep that in mind as we start to solve these problems and bringing everything together. So here's our goals today. Explain what a SPA is. Build out full CRUD. And we're going to do this over the course of the morning and in the afternoon. Manipulate the DOM in conjunction with our CRUD fetch calls. And we're going to also be able to explain optimistic versus pessimistic rendering. we have time, we'll continue to refactor our code, and we'll walk through potentially even more debugging stuff. So let's just get started by, so I just want to review this really quick, but let's get started by what the heck is a spa? Get your nails done, get a massage. Yeah, not that type of spa. Any other type of spa. Anyone know what spa stands for? Any guess? No worries. Single page application. Yeah, exactly. So does anyone know what that would mean? A single page application, single page web application. Any idea what that would, what you would guess that would mean? Go ahead.
Would that mean like when you just have one single page, you can like anchor back and forth, but you don't really go to, there are no other pages?
Yep.
Like you browse?
Exactly. So let's think of some examples of what a single page application, in Rails, it is the opposite of a single page application, right? And there's not a right answer. There's like different tools for different jobs. But we're going to teach you single page applications now. This is what we're going to be building in this mod and in mod 4. So a single page application is an application on a single page. Okay, why does that matter? Well, let's think about Google Maps. Cool. What type of web application is this? Does this look like a Rails app? Like, would I be able to build Google Maps easily in a Rails app? Like, right, like I'm like zooming out to the whole world, go over to Rhode Island, or I don't even know where I am now. This is probably a golf course, I don't know. And then go over here, go to Mali. But like, yeah, so this is crazy, right? So this, and then if I'm like, WeWork, Prospect Street, Brooklyn, right? Did I make any like did it make a new page request? No, right? This feels more like a native application. This is the power of a single page web application. The user interaction is like snappy and responsive, and like everything kind of happens on one page. We don't have to reload anything. I can like get even new information, like come over here and be like, let's just look at all WeWorks, because there's like a bajillion of them in New York now. Boom, and it like zoomed out and does all this stuff. I could be like, search this area, right? There's like a lot. Look at, they're freaking everywhere. I don't. There might be even more than Starbucks. I'm not sure. So definitely not. So if I like go in and I look at what we're doing, right? Like this, every time I do something, look at. Remember, I was filtering by fetch requests right here. These are fetch requests in my network tab. Google uses fetch. Google uses this is how they communicate with their servers to get new information. What pins should be put on here, right? If I click on one of these things, it makes a new request. It's like, what information about this WeWork? How do I get the phone number? All that stuff. All this is done on one page, and it's using these 3 things. So this is why we're learning them. Cool. So this is what a single page web application is. Really, anything where you think like, wow, this does not feel like a website. This feels like an app, right? Like Google Maps feels more like an app. That is a single page web application usually. And it's using these 3 things, right? We're updating the DOM. They're adding new points, right? Add a point, add a point, add a point. We're updating this information. We're like changing the information that's in here in this card. Like this is a new, different address. If I click on this one over here, right? Look, this is a different address, right? We're updating the DOM. We're also getting information from our server. And we're also, how do we know when this should happen? Well, we're listening for an event. We click here, boom, right? These 3 things are how single page web applications work and how they're tied together. Cool. And so from now on, we're going to be building single page web applications for mod 3. Any questions? Does it make sense why we kind of teach them like this, and how it kind of relates to now how you can see like a website, like how these 3 pillars work together? Okay. So that is what a single page web application is. So now I'm going to just review our app, and we're just going to keep using these 3 pillars and just build a single page web application. Cool? We already have a lot of it done. What we don't have right now, right, if I go here, I can like do all this stuff, right? But none of those things save to the database right now, right? Hugs are still 0. Favorite didn't save. Delete didn't save. but we are getting our information from our back end. Gesundheit. Right? So we need to like build out the final part of this, like communicate with the server for all the rest of those things so that we save this data. So here's what we're going to do. Let's review what we did. So far our app has, we can just keep adding cool things to it, right? All the stuff that we've already done, it's all there still. And yesterday, oh, this is what I wanted to cover. Sorry about that. Yesterday, we also the ability to save all of my data about my compliments and the ability to use my saved data to create all of my compliments, right? So that's what we did yesterday. This one is good, right? How do we do that? Does anyone want to tell me in plain English what we did to get our ability to save all of our compliments? Go ahead. Oh, got it. How did we use this to save our compliments instead of hard coding them in an array? What did we do? Go ahead. Yeah, we did a fetch and render. We say, talk to some API. We just happened to make our own API, right? We made a complement API right here. And we just said, just fetch data from this API. Then when that's done, DOM manipulate. Add a bunch of new compliments that we got from our server to our website. That's all we did. Cool? So these ones are it. You're always on time to things, which is awesome because I'm not. We look, what's the first one? You're always on time to things, which is awesome because I'm not. You can see what is a tool if we didn't have access to like look at the API like this? How do we know that we made a server call? What tool do we have in Chrome that tells us that we made a fetch call? Go ahead. Here? Yeah, you're right. We have exactly. We have this tab. It's called the network tab, and it shows us any requests we ever make. So we can see I'm filtering by fetch request, XHR and fetch. But I can look, here's all the ones we made. This is what we did day one. We're like, here's our HTML, here's our CSS, here's our JavaScript. And this initiator, this tells you, where do these come from? Well, this is the original web request. These ones came from the HTML. This is where we pulled the CSS from. This one came from the HTML. You can click that. You can see, oh, yep, this is where that came from. All right, what about this one? Oh, yep, that's where that came from. It's in the index.html. And if I keep going, yeah, you can see like, where did these images come from? Oh, you can see they came from here. But if I just go back, and I go down to, and I filter by fetch, it's actually right here. But if I just filter by fetch, so I can see it, just that one, I'm like, cool. We made a fetch request. Did this fetch request work? Was the status 200? Seems like it did. We can click on it. You can see, yep, it worked. We made a fetch request to this API with a GET. And here's what we got back. A bunch of information. And we can also say, where did this come from? Like, where did this fetch call happen in our app? Oh, index line 26. Oh yeah, right here. Cool. This is like how you can explore this stuff. So great. So we know in Chrome, this tells us that we made a fetch request and that it worked. And you can see, oh, well, where did we use it? We went through here. We did a fetch. We got the response back. We turned that string into JavaScript. It was JSON. We turned it into JavaScript. And then we have our list of compliments. We loop through each of those compliments. We already found our UL tag. And so we take the inner HTML and just concatenate on a new complement li, which comes from this right here. We just pass in the complement, right? That's what we did. Cool. So that's like just a review. But if you look a little further at our objectives, sorry, the ability to use my saved data to create all my compliments, it's not fully accurate yet. So like this isn't fully accurate yet. What do I mean by that? Well, if I look, you're always on time to things, which is awesome because I'm not. And it says hug 0 times. If I look at my API, hug count is 6, right? The next one, hug count is 6. Next one, hug count is 9. Let's look here. Hug count is 0. Hug count is 0. Hug count is 0. So how do we change our code so that we can accurately get the hug count from our server, not just the message? Any thoughts? Go ahead.
So when we're fetching for the images,
Yep.
or on that specific URL link, we could also grab the hub count from there as well, and then just dynamically update it into the HTML.
Awesome. So where in the code would I do that?
You could do it in the fetch request.
Okay.
And then you'll probably have to update the function to accept another argument like hub count.
Okay.
And then, yeah, and then pass that hub count into the HTML.
So you're saying like in here, hug count,
Yeah.
and then what do I do now inside this function?
So you could get rid of that 0 and hug 0 times, and then do the string interpolation of hug count.
Cool. All right. Save that. And so what we did, right, is you said, okay, why did that happen? Well, our template just always hard-coded 0, no matter what came back from the server. We're always like, yep, we start with 0 on our hug count. So we're saying, cool, well, we're going to pass in a dynamic hug count, right, just like we did for complement. And you're saying here, what do I need to do? You're saying I can pass a second argument. What would I do here?
I think it was called complement.hubCount.
Let's see. Debugger. So if I'm not sure, I just like pause the code and let's see what we have. Let's see what the complement is. Refresh. Cool, I'm gonna press escape so I get this console here and I'm gonna see where we are. So we're looping through, we got a response back from our server, we got a list of compliments. It is actually here. And then complement, this is an individual comment we're looking at. And this is what we're gonna be passing in complement.message. So complement, let's open it up. We have hug count. We have all this stuff that came back from the server. Where did these keys come from? Go ahead. Yeah, they're just the same keys that we get from right here. Just turning it into a JavaScript object. So complement.hugCount is undefined. Why is that? Go ahead.
There is an underscore.
Yeah, the key is complement like this. Oops, not like that. Like this. Yeah, it's 6. There we go. So if I were to just run this code with hug count like this, let's just try it. Just so you can see what happens. Save. Refresh. Now we get hugged undefined times. We don't count our hugs in this app. And then we hug it, and now we get 1, 2, 3. That's confusing. Okay. I'm not sure why that happened. I mean, yeah. And so we get undefined times. Well, let's check out the HTML. What happened? Well, hugged undefined times. Because hug count is undefined. But that's what we're passing in. So to fix it, like you said, hug count. Cool. Let's try it now. Go ahead. Yeah. What about that thing? Yeah. So if I look now, hug 6 times works. Hug 6 times works. Hug 9 times. So it looks like hug 98 times. Looks great. Let's hug this one. Let's see what happens. Hugged 1 time. Hugged 2 times. Why? Yeah, we need to update both things. We need to basically, how our hug count logic works is it gets like hug count plus plus basically from the data set. So what do we need to do to fix that? Go ahead. Right here, right? We're starting at 0 when we hug, so we need to start at whatever number the server told us. That was what was happening. I'll show you. I won't run this code yet. I'll just show you here, right? So we've got hugged. Get out of here, you creepy freaking guy. Okay. Hug hug count, right? It's 64 times here, but we're getting our data and our logic for hugging, like how to increment our hug count. It's actually from this data that's bound to it, from data dash hug count, and that's at 0 because we didn't update it. So when I click hug, it goes from, see, 64 and 64, and it goes hug it. Oh, now this is 1, and it re-updates this to 1. That's what's happening. 2, 3, 4. Go ahead.
Where are you putting hug count that wants to start it?
Yeah, right here. We didn't update. There was 2 places where hug was hard coded. Here it said hug 0 times, and here it also says the hug count data on the site tag was that starts at 0.
Right, but you changed it, right? To hug count.
Here I did. I didn't change it yet. Now I'm going to change this one as well.
That's what I mean. If you change it to hug count, how does it always start?
Well, let's put a debugger in here. Let's see what we're passing this function. Refresh. So why did this code get paused? I'm paused in this code right now. Why did that code get paused? Yeah, but why? Yeah, like when did this code get run? Because the only way that a debugger will pause is when this code gets used. Go ahead. Yeah, the fetch request, right? Let's see. Well, this function is called create complement li. In our fetch, we make a call to our server. We say get the response, turn it into JavaScript. Now we have our list of complements. For each of these complements, go in and grab the complement, and our UL tag, take its inner HTML and concatenate on, oh, there's where we call the function. Concatenate on a new li. As we call this function, we have 2 arguments. One is complement.message, and the other one is complement.hug count. And here, the first argument that we pass in is complement, and the second one is hug count. Go ahead. Ooh, yes. Hug count. Thank you. I love it. I love it. This was not intentional, sorry. Hug count. Nope. Hug count, like that. Yep. Let's try this again. All right. So now, hug count gets passed in as 6, and complement gets passed in, because we're calling it right here. Second argument, first argument. So you're asking, like, how does hug count know what it is? Well, we pass it in from the server, and then we put it into the string template right here, both spots.
I guess my question is, why isn't it saying undefined variable? Is it in the database? Like, how does it know to start?
At 6?
At 6, at 0, at anything?
Yeah, good question. So it's because in my API, I've got these keys. Here's the data that I need to persist. I need to say, what was my hug count at? And the next time I make a database call, what was the hug count at? It was at 6.
Make a new one, it just automatically starts at
0. Yeah, if I made a new one in my database, I would just, like, by default start it at 0. Yep.
Like if you put it in your complement app and said, this is great. You're great.
Oh, yeah. We actually haven't built any functionality to tell the server to save anything yet. So it doesn't do anything.
Okay, so I'm a little, okay, just check.
Yeah. No worries. All good. Yeah, hopefully we'll go through it and it'll like make sense. So right now, all I'm doing is getting information from the database. That's all I'm doing. I'm doing a read. So I'm like, hug count is 6. That's how I know what it is. Each one of these 6, 6, 9, 98, 1, 64, 0, 2, 0. Right? I'm just taking that hug count. So let's remove the debugger. Let's try it again. 6, 6, 9. And if I go here, and I look, 6, 6. Now they're both the same thing. So if I press hug it, now it's 7, then 8, then 9, then 10. Right? Everything works now. Awesome. So great. I'd say this is good enough where our README, we can say that's done. We actually read the right information for now. We get our hug count, and all of our functionality still works on the DOM. On this part, and this part, this still works, and we just like pulled in information from our server. Awesome. But the next thing I want to do is I want to update my hug count and have it saved to my database. That's the next feature I want. Okay? So what do I mean by that? Well, I have a question. I'm going to refresh. Okay, so you're always on time to things, which is awesome because I'm not. Hugged 6 times. So look at our API. You're always on time to things, which is awesome because I'm not. Hug count 6 works. If I click hug it, we moved the DOM. So we listened with an event handler on click. We did some DOM manipulation. We increased the hug count to 7 and the text hug 7 times. Did this update the server? I'm seeing head shakes. Who thinks yes? Who thinks if I go back here and I refresh this, hug count will now be 7? Who thinks that? Who thinks no? Cool, cool, cool. So, ready? So I click 7. Let's just go to 10. 1, 2, 2, 2, or 11, I guess. Refresh, still 6, right? 11. If I refresh now, will this be 11? If I press refresh, still 6, right? That's because we're getting our information from our server, but right now we're not updating our server. We're not updating our database. We're not persisting our change. We're doing these two things. We're saying on a click, update the DOM. We also need to say on that click, update our data, right? That's what this is for. Does that make sense? So let's do it. So this is a feature we want to build. Okay. So back to Restular. When you're in Rails and you want to update something, like an active record, and then using REST in a Rails app, how would you update a complement in a Rails app?
You have to create like an edit page
Yep.
and a form for it.
Yep. And is that the only thing you need to do?
No, then create an update so that it saves it like a post update.
Yes. So awesome. So we have get edit, complements ID edit. And then the second step is a put or patch. I'm going to use a patch. They do the same thing. The semantic difference is a patch is used when you just update like one attribute or like not the full complement. So I'm just going to update the hug count. So I'm going to use a patch. But same thing, put or patch. So you first get, and then you put, and you update a specific complement, right? That's what you would do in Rails. What did I say yesterday about HTML with Restular? Kill it, right? No more. We're taking care of it in JavaScript on like our single page web applications. I don't want to make a new web request, right? We're a single page web application. I don't want to make a new get to a whole new page. So all I need is this one. I just need put or patch. So I'm going to do patch to complements ID with the information we need. The reason we would do this before is because we need to get this information. Like what do you need to know conceptually in order to update something in the database? Like using REST, what do you need to know? Go ahead.
It's not the get request.
Yeah, we're gonna use a put or a patch. What are the pieces of information we need to know? If I wanted to give someone some money, someone in this class, single person in this class, some money, what are the two things I would need to know? Go ahead. The ID of the student, right? Which student am I going to give this to? And what else? How much money? Am I going to give you $1? Am I going to give you $100? Right? Like, is it going to be you? It's going to be you. And how much money am I going to give you? Right? That's like, I'm going to update your wallet from whatever it was to plus $100. I need to know who I'm doing it to and how much what I'm actually updating. Right? Those are two things you need for an update. So how do we get that information? Before, right? You'd go to an edit form. You'd say, I have the ID, so I know which complement. And then you'd have some info that you'd type in. You'd have like a hug count box, and you type in it goes from 6 to 10 or something. And then you would in your controller, then you'd basically then after you submit the form, it would send a put to complements ID with the information from your form. That's how you would do that. Well, we don't do this step anymore. Goodbye. But we're just going to do this step directly using fetch. All right? So I'm just going to build the fetch out. Just going to build this part out, and then we're going to figure out where to put it into this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do an update. Fetch. And what is a route? Put to complements / ID. So let's just pick this first complement, right? You're always on time to things, so that's ID 52. Right, there it is. So we'll take this route, or this path right here, complement 52. Let's fetch to this path. And normally, if I just do this, this is a get. This is a get request. But if I want to do anything different, any other HTTP verb, or do anything different besides a get request, fetch takes a second argument. So the first argument is the path you're going to. The second argument, it's an object. Okay? And you can just define the object right in line. And so the object has different keys. And this is a config object. So I'm just going to press enter so we can make it on a new line. And I'm just going to write keys. Okay? So it has keys like, oh, cool, you're going to send a fetch. What's the second argument? If there's a second argument, what's the method you're going to send? Method. What method are we going to use? What HTTP verb? Yep, put. I'm going to use patch. Same thing. Yep, all good. We also need something called headers with an S. This is a very tricky error. If you write header, you'll be like, why doesn't my app work? It's headers. Cool. Headers takes another object. Okay, I'll explain headers in a second. Headers is basically information about the request we're about to send to our server. And the final thing it takes is body. Okay? So in fetch, how we update stuff is we say, okay, cool, we're still going to use this fetch tool. We're going to say this is the URL we're going to, first argument. Second argument is an object that takes it just tells fetch what to do. Cool, fetch, we're actually, instead of using a get request, we're going to do a patch. Fetch, also, when you talk to the server, please use these headers, which I'll explain what that means in a second. And also, this is where the information goes. So how do I know the two things for an update? I'm updating this complement, ID 52, and I'm going to update the hug count. So it's going to go in the body. That's where we tell it what we're going to update. And so that, we're just going to say, here's the key that the server has, hug count. Right, so I'm going to put it right in this body, hug count. And let's say the hug count is going to be 80 now. Okay? So this is how we do a fetch with an update. Go ahead.
So do you have to put all the keys of your database if it's going to save anything?
Say it one more time.
Like in the database, you have to complement the hub count and the figured. Do you have to add all those while you're doing it?
No. So for an update, you can just put like one key. Yep. Yep. You're going to say, I'm just going to do hug count, or I'm just going to do favorited, or I'm just going to update the message. Or you can do multiple ones. Doesn't matter. Yep. Totally. Great question. Go ahead.
So if you wanted to update like favorited and as well, then you would have to make another fetch tool. Or can you just put it in the body?
No, you can do more. You can, like what she was saying, you can say, you can do that. Now we have two pieces of information. And we can put them on new lines if it's easier to read. You'll see this is pretty common. Right, like that. You can do that. Go ahead.
Sorry,
No, no, go ahead.
Does this have to be different for update versus new?
It will be different for new, right? Like
You have to do a new fetch
to create something.
to create and to update?
So update. Let's think about what we need for update. We need who we're updating and what data we're updating, right? And it's what method is it? That's a patch. If I go back to RESTfuler, if we're going to create, how do you create something? What route do you use? But remember, we're getting rid of /new because it's no HTML. What do we need? We need to go to post, just to slash compliments because we don't have an ID yet. And we need to give it all the information that we're going to create. So we'll do that after this. Yep, good question. Go ahead.
I would be jumping ahead, but how would you, so you've hard coded 80 for head count, how would you pull the current head count
Yeah,
to that?
yeah. So we're going to do it like this for now. Then I'm going to show you how to do it dynamically. Then I'm going to show you how to hook it into this stuff. Cool? Cool. So this is actually going to break here. I just wanted to explain each of the details. I'll also talk about this really quick, just so you understand what's going on. This headers thing. Headers in general, if you see like head and body in HTML or headers on requests, right? If I go to like my network tab, you can see there's headers right here. It says request headers, response headers. Headers are basically information about what you're doing. It's like if I'm going to give you money, right? Let's just go back to me giving one of you $100. I give you $100. I'm like, hey, FYI, before I do this, I'm just letting you know that I'm giving you this $100, and it's going to be in American currency. And like maybe there's some more interesting information I want to tell you about it. And if you give me anything back, here's what I expect you to give me back, right? The headers part, that is like how you communicate to a server back and forth, talking about the transaction you're about to do. So what we're doing here in headers, here's the conversation we're having with our server. We're saying, hey server, FYI, I'm about to send you some stuff. Well, what is the content that I'm sending you? Oh, it's actually going to be JSON, right? So this body, this is going to be JSON. Cool, thanks. You can expect to get JSON from me when I send you this data. And what I'll accept back from you is JSON. So I'm going to give you JSON and I want JSON back. That's the conversation we're having with these headers. Cool? Go ahead.
So that's like pretty universal to what we're doing, basically. So our headers would basically stay
Yep.
application.
Yep, exactly. And if you want to see like what other types of like content can you send? You can send text CSS, text plain, text HTML, text JavaScript. All these crazy weird versions of, oh, this one's like, no, no, danger, no. And then image GIF, image JPEG, image PNG, image WAV files. There's so many, there's actually a bunch more than this too. There's like hundreds. So you can say like here, this is basically just telling the server, hey, I'm about to send you this type of data. And we're gonna be just doing JSON back and forth. Go ahead.
Can you like compile different types of data?
What do you mean by that?
Meaning like, oh, I'm gonna send you this and this.
There is ways to do that right now. Great question. We're going to only send like just one type, but you can totally, there's like all different ways you can say like there's gonna be different types that I might send you. So be ready for any of them kind of thing. Yep. Great question. All right, so I'm gonna do this. Press enter. Bad request. And I wanted to show you this because everything I told you is right, but I just want to show you one more step that we didn't do, and it's going to trip you up a lot if you don't understand what's happening. So weird, bad request. Well, we can go to our network tab. Anytime we're doing fetch, our tool, our go-to tool is the network tab. So look, I have a red. Uh-oh. Whoops, it failed. 400. Right, 400 was a bad request. Well, this is really cool. What we can do is move this over a little bit. We can look at our response. And we actually have an error and what the exception was. So you can say action dispatch HTTP parameters parse error 419 unexpected token at object. Huh? And you can also see in our Rails server, because we're talking to our Rails server right here, same error, the same stuff right here. Started the patch for compliments 52. error occurred when parsing parameters, object to object. Then it's the same error. It's like, what the heck did you just give me? So let me explain what's happening. When I go to my headers, here's how you read this. I set it to complement slash 52. I did a patch. That looks right? That's what we're supposed to do using RESTful conventions. And request payload. This is the body. This is the information that we want to update. We sent it this weird thing that looks like object object. What we didn't actually send it JSON, even though we said we were going to. Look, we have headers now. This is what we just typed in. We are saying, hey, FYI, we're going to send you JSON. We didn't actually send you JSON. What we actually need to do, we need to change this. And I'm just going to go back to hug count so it's on one line, but the other one would work. We need to actually JSON stringify. We need to turn this object, this JavaScript object, into JSON. So if I press enter now, no error. Did it work? How would we know? What's the best guess? Can we check anywhere? What? Check the API. Yeah, we can check the API. What if we didn't have access to it? What if just in the Chrome tools? What in the Chrome tools can we look at? We could look at the promise. Yep, resolved. We got a response. It said 200. Okay, looks like it worked. What else though? What did I just say about like what's the best like troubleshooting resource? One of the best ones in Chrome for fetch. Go ahead. The network tab. Let's see. Oh yeah, here we go. Not read. Oh, 200. Sweet. Our hug count got updated to 80. Awesome. And we can look at our headers. If we look down, look, this is what we actually sent it this time, not object object. See hug count 80. So let me explain a little bit what's going on. I'll write on this side now. I don't know what this is, but I'll just write next to it. Okay, so our request response thing again, right? So I am basically this time, what am I doing? I'm talking to my server still, I'm using fetch, but here I'm saying not a get, but I'm doing a patch to slash compliments slash, is it 52, I think? Something like that? Yeah, 52. Cool, and I'm sending it hug count 80, right? And that's this is like the route, and then this is like the body. This is the Bobby, the body. There you go, the body, right? This is what I'm sending. This is JSON. This is a string, and I'm getting back then. I'm getting back JSON. Getting back the whole object as a string. ID. I don't even know what it is. I don't know. 52. Message. Hug count. 80, et cetera, et cetera. So how we talk on the internet, back and forth between servers and clients, strings. And the data, the way that we transmit data, there's different ways. The protocol we're going to use is always JSON. JSON in, JSON out, always JSON. Why? Well, let me ask some questions. What language is our server in? What language is our API in? What do we write our API in? We've been using, what language, what was your first language you just learned? Yeah, it's Rails, right? This is an API written in Rails. I know it's confusing. That's what this is. It's Rails, right? What language is Rails in? Ruby. Okay. What language can we use in a web page? Yeah, JavaScript. Can I just, in JavaScript, just start writing Ruby code? Right? What do you think? No? Yeah, no. If I'm in Ruby world, can I just start writing JavaScript? No, it breaks, right? It's like, what the heck is this crap? The word function, what are you doing, man? So they're different languages, right? The thing that we'll have in common when we transmit data back and forth between a server and a client is it's language agnostic. It doesn't care what language, right? Before, when we're using JSON, what does this look like? This JSON thing. If you're in Ruby, what does this look like? A hash, right? With keys and values. In JavaScript, what does this look like? An object, right? It's a string. But what happens is, depending on the language that you're in, it will turn it into that language for you. That's why we use JSON. That's why we use strings back and forth. Because what if I didn't want to write in Ruby? What if I wanted to write in Python? There's a way you can build Python apps with APIs. You could use something called Django. You can use something called Flask, which is like Sinatra. So this one's in Flask, right? And the language is Python. Do I need to change anything over here? If I just like made the same exact API, but just use Python and Flask. Do we need to change anything from here on? What do you think? Yeah, so actually it respects all the same HTTP stuff. So no, why? Because this is a dictionary in Python, right? Same but different. So it's just a string that looks like a lot of things in different languages. And each language can say, I know what to do with JSON. I'll turn it into my language. Thank you very much. This is how you can communicate back between different languages and different apps. It's really cool. So what we need to do is we cannot just send a JavaScript object. That's what we were trying to do. We were just saying, yo, take my JavaScript. And Ruby's like, I don't know what that is. I'm sorry. Like, I'm going to break. We need to say, no, where everything is JSON back and forth. That's the point of it. Cool? All right, go ahead.
So right now we're thinking through the client side, right? But then if we were to save on the server side, would that, well, yeah, which one will be better, I guess, like security-wise, if you
Well, no, this is how we're going to do it always. Like, you could independently, like, just do some stuff in here and save, and then we'll get those updates here. But if you want to build a single-page web application, we're always going to be using something like fetch to like make requests and responses back and forth. This is how we save information. Yep. Go ahead.
Dumb question, 'cause I think I missed this part. How are we communicating are we using the Rails server? I think you mentioned that before in our app, but like where in the app is it defined that we're like using Rails?
It actually, right now, we're just using this API. This could be like Google Books API or something like that. We just made an API, and it's running on a Rails port. It's a little confusing. We're just like I just have literally a Rails app running, and that's all this is doing. This is basically an API that I just made in Rails. Okay? Yeah. Good question. So you can see here, look, in Rails, I passed in hug count 80, the ID 52, complement hug count 80, and it updated, right? Update. It did everything we needed to do. But either way, all we care about right now is like just making sure we send the server the right stuff. Hug count as JSON, sending it to compliments 52 as a patch. And our server knows, sweet, that worked, right? Like 200, okay, thank you. Here's your response. Yep, you got an updated hug count of 80. So now if I refresh this, ID 52, what do you think this will be? Fun fact, Rails, once you update it, it sends it into another random place in this list. Thanks, Rails. 52, oops. It's right here. 80, yep, it updated. Cool, right? And if I go over here, refresh, here it is, 80 times, right? It worked. So this is how we update our server, our data, using fetch. Let's do that again. We say, go to Restular. Okay, yep, it's a put to complements ID with some specific information. We go back over here. We say, cool, it's going to be a patch, put, same thing. I could say put, it doesn't matter. Or pug, no, we cannot say pug. Put, patch, it's to this complement. This is a conversation we're having. Hey, we expect to give you JSON or receive JSON, and we're going to turn this body into JSON. One more thing I'm just going to do really quick so you can see it in a different way. Zoom tight. Okay, so I have this object that I was messing with, right? This is JavaScript, right? This is a JavaScript object. If I tried to send it to a server, what the server will do, why that weird bracket object thing happens, is if I tried to say, server, thank you. We're sending this to server, right? What happens is it just tries to turn it into a string. It says toString. Cool. It doesn't know what to do with that. You're like, yo, I don't know what that is. That's why we need to. Yeah, that's why we need to turn this. So I'll just make a new variable actually. JSON body object. So that will be JSON dot stringify body object. See, what is this? It's a string. Now, it actually works, right? This is how you actually send information back and forth. It turns it into a string. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It means it looks kind of like a JavaScript object or a Ruby hash or a dictionary in Python. It doesn't matter. And if we wanted to get this JSON body object back into a JavaScript object, right? This is just a JSON. What we need to do is JSON parse. Back into JavaScript now. Now it works. Cool. That's how this works back and forth.
Stringify, is that just a solely method for JSON?
Yeah, this is a method in JSON and JavaScript. And there's a similar method in Ruby, and there's a similar method in Python, there's a similar method in Golang, and in every language. Yep. Cool. All right. So I just wanted to spend some time on that because it's important to know like what are the details of how these work. Let's get a little more advanced. All right, so I'm back to here. So you asked a question before, you're like, I might be skipping ahead. How do I make this dynamic? How do I like what are the parts of this? If I wanted to update any complement with any hug count, what would I need? What would I need to do? Go ahead. Like here and here? Here you're saying? Yeah, so I'm gonna write a function. So I'm just gonna go back over here. And I'm gonna write a function. So instead of just like hard coding complements and the hug count, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wrap this whole thing in a helper function. Cool? So update hug count on server. All right? What do I need to change? Like, how can I make this dynamic now so that I can update any hug count and any complement? Go ahead. I need to do backticks when I do string interpolation. Yeah, you're getting ahead of me, but that's exactly what you need to do. So yeah, perfect. Let's just copy this function and let's use it. right? So now we went from a hard-coded thing. Now we have a dynamic function we can use. And yes, that is what we will need to do after. So delete. So I define this update hug count on server. So what if I wanted to update, I don't know, 53, ID 53, and I wanted to update the hug count to 20. How could I use this? So it's looking like a complete idiot with you is really fun. ID 53, hug count 1. How can I use this function to update my hug count? Go ahead. No, sorry, go ahead. Yep. Let's make the hug count 100. Cool? Let's try it. I'm great. Oh man. Everyone keeps trying to help me. I just like the word sever, I guess. Bam. So did it work? It returned undefined. Did it work? How do we check? How do we know? Where can we go? The database, yeah, we could go there. What about if we didn't have access to the database? Just in Chrome, where can we go? Network tab, yeah, I just want to get you all familiar with this. Oh, check it out. We made a fetch request to 53, hug count 100, 200. Like, see our response, 200, it's okay, it's a patch. Preview, looks like it worked. Awesome, we can go back here, check. ID 53. Yep, hug count 100 now. Cool, it's all working. Right, so now we have a function I'm going to rename server, not sever, and that will dynamically, given the two things we need, an ID and the information we need to update, we can do it for any one of these components now. Great, so we have this server communication. So what do we do with it? That's cool, but what do we do with it? Go ahead. Say it one more time. Awesome, yeah, I like that. What do you mean specifically? Yeah, you're saying like I got this new hug count. Let's like update the DOM because right now, this is looking like a complete idiot. Looking, this is still hugged one time, right? I need to make a full page refresh. Now it's 100, right? That's unfortunate. We don't want to do that. This is a single page app. We don't want to make full page refreshes. So, and where do we even call this function? Like what? How does this? Like right now, I'm just doing this in the console, right? I need to rename this to server. Okay, so I have this in the console, but where do I use this in my app? Someone who hasn't volunteered yet. Yeah, where we do the hug it, right? What was your thought process there?
Just sort of all together the hug it, update the number on the web page.
Mm-hmm.
Also want the number in the database page.
I love it. That's exactly right, right? We think about the problems we're trying to solve. We say, well, how do I know when to do an update? Well, before in Rails, you'd have this like compliments /ID /update, and you know I have to fill a form out. But here on this page, we need to rely on event handling, right? Our user interaction. Our user is telling us it wants to be updated, right? Why? Because we're clicking, hug it, what's up? This is how we know that we're updating. And we're already taking this event and updating the DOM. But we need to also take the same user input and update our database. So we save the information, right? So right now, again, if I hug this a million more times, right, and I refresh, still 100. And that is terrifying. Refresh. Yeah, so you get the idea, right? So we need to do that final step. We need to take this event handler where we hug, and we need to also update our database. So let's check that out. Where are we updating our hug count in our code? Go ahead. Yeah, let's look for that. Right here. Right, UL tag, we're saying on the UL tag, any click, if it's a button, this is how we know it's a hug, right? We want to hug it. And we have the button tag, and we're like console logging the target, which is a button. And we're saying go to that site tag, grab that, update the hug count by taking the site tag data set and updating that by plussing, and then reassigning the hug counts data, and then reassigning the inner text of the hug count, or the site tag. Hugged X amount of times. So we have all that information. We're updating the DOM. We need to update our database now. So we need to probably like use this like probably need to use it like right here, right? Somewhere in here where we know the button's clicking. All this stuff is basically for like updating the DOM. We also need to update the server. So what do we do? Any guess? Go ahead. Yeah, I totally agree. So what are the arguments I need to run this? What are the two things that we need to do to update this hug count? Let's go back down here. What were the two arguments? Go ahead. Yep, that's the two arguments. So we need to call them in here. So we need ID and we need hug count, right? ID somehow and hug count somehow. So where do I get them from? Let's skip ID for now. Where can I get hug count from? Go ahead. I already have hug count, right? Right here. This is already the updated hug count. I'm going to put that right here. Cool, part one done. Right, what do I mean by that? Let's put a debugger right here. So I click hug it, code pauses. I want to make a server call here as well. So I'm doing DOM manipulation. It was at 6, now it's at 7. And if I press escape, I can see what's my updated hug count? It's 7, right? So I know that it was 6 before. It already updated. I paused the code after it updated, and now we're at 7. So I want to pass that in. I want to say, okay, cool, server. Like we updated the DOM with this, but we also want to say, remember, we just updated our hug count to 7. But there's a first argument, ID. Where does ID come from? Like if we look at this event dot target, it's a button. Okay, nothing's there. Let's go up to its parent. Okay, there's a div with a site tag. Okay, we've got data hug count 7. Right, we've got hug count 7. Okay, there's nothing. Let's just go up to that parent. One more. Okay, now we've got the whole LI. I don't see an ID anywhere. So how do we get this final argument in here? How do we update our server? We need two things. We need the ID and we need the updated hug count. We have the updated hug count from we already solved it using this DOM manipulation thing. Where does our ID come from? Go ahead. Yep. 100%. What do you mean by that? Up here? Good question. Good question. Yeah. No, it's great. Your intuition is solid. We need to do this somehow. Go ahead. We can add unlimited data sets anywhere on any element at any time. Yep. What did I just type? No. All right, ID. Cool. And then do what?
And then you would retrieve the ID from the fetch.
Out down here?
That's a good question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you would pass in, I think, complement.id. I don't know what is really called.
Debugger. Let's see. Cool. So we're in our fetch. We get our response back. And we're going through each complement. Let's see what a complement has. Right? This is what we get back from our server. We get back an ID, a hug count, favorited, create at, timestamps, message, all that stuff. Right? It's the same as all this stuff right here. So we get ID back from the server. We just didn't do anything with it yet. We need to bind it to each of our HTML elements somewhere. Right? And like what you were saying, we can just pass in complement.id into our making our template for HTML. So we put it in. Now what do we want to do with it? We have our ID. Perfect. Go ahead. Cool. How do we do that? What do you want to do?
Make it a little more, like right there at the where it says hub count, yeah, before that or after that? Right there, this is data ID equals and then the variable for ID up there.
Yep. There we go. This is how we can add more than one piece of data in the data set in HTML. You just do data dash and the variable name. If it's 2 words, like this. If it's 1 word, it's like this. We can call this cheese. It doesn't matter. Cool. Just data ID. No commas. Yeah. If I wanted to add this ID other places, I'm allowed to do that. I can do that here. The ID never changes, so I can put this data on any HTML element. But I'm just gonna. So there's not really a right way to do this. I like putting it here where it's put where we've already put it, because it's like, hey, I already have the site tag in my code down here, right? I already have the site tag. I'm already accessing its data set, so let's add a new key to that. Cool. So let's see what we did. Cool. ID, hug count, and complement. ID, hug count, complement. That comes from a server. Complement ID, complement hug count, complement message. Cool. Save. Refresh. God, refresh again. All right. That one's just terrifying. Okay. So here, look, we have a new thing. Data ID 51. Go to that's this one, right? It's right here. It's on the data set. We just added it from the server. We added it to our template. Let's look at the next one. Data ID 66, right? This one. Data ID 66. Let's look at the next one. Now we have each of the IDs on the server. Like 73 is the third one. Let's see. 73, third one. Yep. You're so fetch. You're so fetch, right? It works. Awesome. Cool. So now that we have that final step to make this all work, and we have our server communication for all hug counts being updated. Final thing. We need to go back here. We need to get the ID. Right? We have hug count, updated hug count. We need to get that ID. So I'm going to put a debugger in one more time. So refresh. The debugger will not activate until I click. Right? Now it's stuck here. Right? So it was 6, now it's 7. Site tag. See, there's a data ID and data hug count. Data set. Now it's got 2 keys, ID and hug count. Dataset.id. There's our ID. Cool. So all we need to do is say update hug count on server, pass in the ID, and pass in the updated hug count. Enter. Did it work? We have to look at the network tab. Let's just check it out. We have a pending request, so we need to press play in order to see if it worked. Press play. Complement 51, hug count 7, and 200. Let's see the response. Yeah. Let's check our API. Refresh. Which one was that? Let's see. Complement ID 51, right? So I can just go 51. That'll be easy. Head count 7. It all worked. Awesome. So we just persisted our data now. So let's play with this. I'm gonna remove the debugger, and I'm just gonna do it in here. Right. So that was city or site tag.dataset.id. Right. That's how we got the ID. Refresh. Not the bees. Hug it. Went from 9 to 10. Check it out. It also, look, see, it made a call. It said, close that. It says ID 66, made a patch, hug count 10. And it worked, right? Hug it again, hug it again, hug it again. Look down here, 11, then 12, then 13, right? So every time we do this, every time we click, it updates the DOM, right? Updates this and the data set and saves to our database. That's what happens. Go ahead.
Can I see one more time where you put that update function?
Yeah, no problem. Absolutely. Right here. We're saying go to the UL tag. Anytime there's a click on the UL tag, run this code. If the event target, so the HTML that was clicked, if the tag name is button, then run this code until here. This code. This is for hugging. And we say, okay, grab the button, grab the site tag, go to button, go up, and go find the site tag. Grab the updated hug count. There it is. Update the hug count. Set the new updated hug count to the data set. Update the text, and then update the server. That's what's happening. Cool. Any questions on this? Okay. So refresh. Now it's like, and see, it updated the server, so it went down here somewhere, but it's there. So now I can be like, hug count. If I spam this, right, it makes a fetch request for every click, which is actually totally fine. That's what we want to happen. See, 73, 70, or 130, 129, 128, 127, 126. We just update it each time, and we update the DOM. This is a single page app. This is how it works. We don't do any upfront page refreshes. This doesn't make a new page request. It just does these fetch requests in the background. This is how we persist data. Cool. So this is how these work together. Okay. Now there's one other thing that I want to show you here. So we did a read where we did the read yesterday where we get all these cards from the server on the page load and make each of these. That was the very first fetch we made yesterday. Now we did an update. After lunch, we're going to do a create. So I'm going to create and then a delete. And then you'll have full CRUD. Yep, and then that's it. We'll practice this over and over all day, like the rest of the day today, all day tomorrow, over the weekend, and then Monday and Tuesday, and then the code challenge. So you'll have plenty of time. Go ahead. We will do reviews, which I think will be really helpful. If there's a large interest, we might do a mock code challenge. Yeah, we'll see. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so if there's a large interest, we might. Like, I'm open to it. So yeah, awesome. So let me show you one more thing about this update. And here's what we've done so far. If we go back to our learning goals, we know what a SPA is now. We've done RU, right? That's what we've done so far, read and update. After lunch, we'll do create and destroy. And we've manipulated the DOM in conjunction with our CRUD fetch calls. What do I mean by that? Does somebody want to explain that? I'm manipulating the DOM in conjunction with our CRUD fetch calls. Go ahead.
You just change the DOM to whatever fetch.
Yeah. When I click this event, when I click hug it, it's updating the DOM and it's updating my server. Right? Our data, our front end and our back end are like matching the same thing every time I click now. Now it's in conjunction with each other. Now it's like the same. What I didn't talk about, and this is what I'm going to finish in the next 10 minutes with, optimistic versus pessimistic rendering. So what we're doing right now is something called optimistic rendering. Okay, and it's kind of like what it sounds like. So the rendering part is talking about rendering back to the DOM. That's what optimistic rendering and pessimistic rendering is talking about. When do we make a DOM update? When do we change a DOM? So before, when I click this, what's the logic for that, right? When I click this, whenever a click happens on this button, just update the DOM, period. Also, now, update the server, right? We do both of them. But the optimistic part is like, if I really want my server, if I want this data and this data to actually be fully in sync, there's actually, right now, we're being optimistic about it. We're saying, I'm optimistically assuming that this server call is going to work, right? I'm like updating this, and I'm like, yeah, I know this is going to work, so I'm just going to update it. I'm not even going to check if that works. This is always going to work. Great. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to refresh. You're so fetch hugged 131 times, right? I want to break my API, right? This is my API. Right, here's my API. If I go to Rails, turn my server off, go back. Whoops, don't have a server, right? Server's down. Now I'm going to hug it. Ready? Hugged 132 times. He's like, no. Hugged 133, 134, 135, 136, 137, 138. Look, all these fetches failed. And we're still showing the user, yeah, you're going viral. Yeah, but it's like fake news. It's not working, right? Does that make sense? So let me show you what I mean. If I go back, first of all, if I refresh right now, so remember, we tried to hug Yorso fetch 148, right? Yorso fetch 148. If I refresh right now, actually the app breaks, right? Because my server is broken, right? It didn't work. So I'm going to restart my server. Refresh. See, we're back to 131. We actually didn't update our server. So this is what optimistic rendering is. We're optimistically showing the user that it worked. We're not even checking if we got a response back and if that worked. Okay? Pessimistic rendering is saying, I don't think anything's ever going to work, so I'm going to wait till my server comes back and it tells me I'm good, then I'm going to update my DOM. So in this case, I click this button. I don't do anything on the DOM yet. This button sends off my fetch request. I get my fetch request back. I say, was that good? Did it update? If it did, then update this. That's pessimistic rendering. It's assuming the worst. So we're going to build that really quick, and then I'm going to break the server again, and you'll see the difference. Okay? So in the code, right, I'm just going to remove all this unnecessary stuff so it's easier to read. Oops, sorry. All right. So here's what's happening. Right, this part So, and then so this is what's happening. This part gets our like hug count data. This part updates the DOM, and this part updates our server. Or this is optimistic. Even though this could be run before, it doesn't really matter. It's just like they don't even know about each other. They're just both running when you click. What I want to do now is I want to use this update count on server, and I want to say, when this is all done, then check. And if it worked, then update the DOM. Okay? So, right now, we are, what, this looks different than our first time we've been using fetch, right? Like the first time inside of here, if I just copy this and put it right next to the other fetch we do, right? We have, so it looks different in two ways. One, this is the same as this. I'm gonna write this one a different way really quick so you can see like, this is actually what's going on, right? So this is normal fetch with just get. This is the fetch with patch. Again, in the first argument is a string. The second argument is a config object. I just like put it in a variable so you can see that's what's happening. So this is the same part, but like if I go back, right? So I basically just have like this line is what I'm doing here. I'm not doing anything with our response, right? We get a response back from the server here, but I don't even capture it. I don't do anything. I just like send a fetch request. That's what's happening. Right, so if I go back in here, all I'm doing in this function is I'm just sending something to the server. I'm not even like checking. I'm not looking at the response. I'm not parsing it. I'm not doing anything with it. So how would I be able to grab the response from a fetch? Good. Yeah, catch would be if there's an error. What would we use before? Go ahead. Yep. And so it's all good. So so we go from, so then we go from, so we get this request. We make this request. What do we put in here? What is this diagram, right? I make a patch. I send it JSON. I get a response back. What's the response I get back? Yeah, JSON in, JSON out. It's always JSON. Anytime I'm making internet requests, it's a string of JSON. So what do? How do I use this response? Go ahead. Yeah, basically a JSON parse it. How do we do that before? Well, what did we do? We did response return response dot JSON. I don't know how that I got in there. That is JSON dot parse, basically. This is what we're doing. We're turning it from this JSON and we're turning it into JavaScript. That's what's happening here. Okay, now we have JavaScript. Now we have our response in JavaScript. Now what? How did we use it before? We got back, we did this fetch, right? This gave us back a list of compliments. So we took a response, we turned that string of JSON into an array of objects, and then we use them. Right? So what do we do here? How? Yeah. Yeah, you're like, I don't know what to call this yet. That's cool. Cool? Let's try it. Okay, let's check the console. How do I get this to work? How do I run this? There we go, right? Why did that happen? Well, it's like, where did this log from? Right here. Why did that log? Well, where are we using this function? We're using it anytime we click, we're running this function. And this function makes a fetch, and it's a patch to that specific complement with the right hug count. And then we say, oh, get the response, turn it into JavaScript, and then log what we get back. That's what's happening. Cool? And what do we get back? We got back the updated hug count. We got back the whole updated complement object. So this might be a little mind-bendy. One more mind-bendy concept, and we're done. Sorry, this is it. All right, so remember how I said functions are not implicit return. They're explicit return. I now want to return something from this function. Right now I'm not returning anything, okay? What does a fetch return? A promise. And then I can call dot then on that promise. And what does dot then return? Another promise. And then I can call dot then again. And what does that dot then return? Another promise. So what I'm going to do is I want to, so this is actually, if we looked at what this was, right? This is our complement, right? This is our updated complement. That's what this is. So another var here is updated complement. That's what that is. Cool. So what I want to do is I actually want to return this fetch, which because they're method chained together, and I'm going to remove this then. Cool. So I could actually write all of this on one line. And technically, this is what's happening. So I'm returning here. I'm returning this fetch, which is crazy town, and also you method chain on this then. So it returns basically this parsed JSON. That's what this return is returning, is all this code. But it's really hard to read, so I will return it like this. But basically what's happening is this return says, hey, return this promise, but since this promise is chained onto it, basically return the parsed JSON from this fetch request. That's what this function is going to do now. Okay? And what does a dot then return? What? A promise. A fetch returns a promise, a dot then returns a promise. So I can actually now call a dot then on this function. Okay? Here's how to read this. Update hug count on server. Because I'm returning the fetch, which has got a dot then chained onto it, this whole thing basically rolls up all the code on the inside and says, hey, when I make this call, I'm going to return you a promise. Here's what my promise says. My promise says, I promise as this function, update hug count on counter, on server, I'm going to update the hug count on the server. I'm going to parse that JSON into a JavaScript object, and then I'm going to return a promise so you can have that object if you want it. So I can call dot then on this function now because I returned. This will be pessimistic, right? I'll explain in a second. Debugger. It's not yet. So here's what's going to happen. I'm just going to comment this part out. Okay? So here's what's going to happen now. I'm going to say when I click this button, run this function, update hug count on server, which will talk to my server, will do the patch request, will parse my response back into JavaScript, and return a promise, because I'm being returned here. I can then chain in another then. So I'm saying when all that crap's done, then I should get back an updated complement, and I should be able to use it. So I'm going to pause the code now. So what's going to happen is I'm going to click hug. It's going to get all the data that I need from my updated hug count, and I have the data set ID, so I'm going to pass in the data set ID and the updated hug count, just like we were doing before. I'm going to say, when all this is done, then give me back my updated complement. That's what's going to happen. Refresh, hug it. Cool, code paused. Right, I had this data set ID and hug count, and I'm basically like, give me the response back from the server. There it is. Here's my updated complement. Right, and if you look, hug count is 133. That's what we got back from the server. We did not update the DOM yet. It's still 132. So we now have a spot where we know, hey, we got a response back from the server. Everything worked. Now update the DOM. So here's how we do that. We take this part that updates the DOM, and we just move it inside of here. And instead of using updated hug count, we use our updated complement, right? This thing. We use this key hug count. Right here. Like that. So this is called pessimistic rendering. And that's all. This is it. Yep, go ahead.
What's like best practice, what we should, that seems like intuitively better to do? Is that like what?
Yeah, most things, a lot of things it'll be like, what is the type of problem you're solving? So for example, if you care about really fast user interaction and you don't care about accuracy as much, optimistic rendering is gonna be better, right? Like if you're like, I actually don't care if it's 100% accurate, I just want like quick feedback because I don't want to wait for a server call. It'll be better to optimistically render. Pessimistically rendering is gonna be like, if I care about data quality and accuracy, it's fine. I'll not update the DOM until I get a response back. Certain things you can only pessimistically render. So for example, we'll get into it later, but like create, you can only pessimistically render, which we'll find out why tomorrow or after lunch. Cool. So this is it. So let's redo this now. So let's see if everything works. Network, 34, 35, 36, right? 34, 35, 36. Everything works still. Looks like we didn't do much. But if I break my server now, let's see what happens. Broken server. Hug it, hug it. Oh, it's not updating now, see? Right, we're waiting for that response back. It doesn't matter how many times I press it, as long as this is broken, nothing comes back. Does that make sense? Right, that was the mind bendy, like returning stuff and all that. But hopefully that makes sense. I'll let you marinate on that, and then we'll finish out create and delete after lunch. Thank you.